Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim or Simnaya, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about this video that I saw about how why does black wealth confuse people? You know, when I say confuse people, you already know what I'm talking about. And a lot of people really have so many things to talk about, like to say their experiences, what they have experienced, how some black people were also profiled on their own property, or some of black people that live in a probably a neighborhood were being were being asked questions. I remember that there was a video that circulated sometime online about a black man who was fishing in his own neighborhood, and they like about 4 to 5 person stopped by to ask, are you supposed to be in this neighborhood and all that? And they ended up calling the cops on them, which he recorded them, and some of them lost their jobs and they started screaming and all that, and that black people sometimes make them lose their job. Black people don't make you lose your job. It's only when you do some nasty things and they call you on it. And if you were minding your business, you wouldn't have lost your job, right? So a lot of people were also saying that they remember that, going to where they were building houses and all that to check how the construction was going, and they were asked if they were, probably the people that were working did not know that she's the owner. They asked her if she's here to clean up the place. There are so many experiences. And you know what? Stay glued. Let's just get into this video.
All of rich black TikTok knows it's a canon event to be mistaken as the help in your own home. I'd even dare to generalize and say that most people of color with nice homes in America have been mistaken as the help in their own home. And interestingly enough, the people who live in those neighborhoods might be heard saying things like, there's a lot of representation already, right? And we're kind of overdoing it with the diversity and the representation and all that kind of stuff in our media. Like, we get the picture, you guys exist. And we know those people get Ralph Lauren flyers, all of them, because of our zip code. Those kind of mailers, they just come to houses like this. And on it, they will see something like this family. My mom has had several conversations with various people who have walked up to our house asking where the lady of the house is, or if she left the check, the lady of the house, not her. And people arguing about whether or not we have the right to be on the public garden that is actually our private property. And now most of you have probably heard this before. When you try to tell other people about this funny incident that you had, there's usually this call to sympathy for these people who have mistaken you as the help. They're ignorant, right? We can't, poor them. Maybe they haven't traveled. Maybe they haven't seen things. They're just ignorant. That's what it is. It's just ignorance. And once people are made aware, they will not behave like that anymore. In all our discussions of art history, portraiture as an art form, and just the history in general of the United States of America, I would like to reframe that. We are not dealing with ignorance. We are dealing with the intentional education of a certain kind of people as to who belongs where. Many of our neighbors did not grow up seeing ads like this. They did not see this anywhere because it was illegal. Up until 1967, the US shared something similar with Nazi Germany and apartheid South Africa, and that was laws against quote-unquote interracial marriage, which I take issue with that term because there's only one race. It's the human race, and then we've got ethnicities, and then you've got the construct of whiteness and blackness. But for this video, we'll just say interracial marriage. So while some states in the 60s allowed for interracial marriage, there were 31 states that didn't. And it was Loving v. Virginia. We have the Equal Protection Clause from the 14th Amendment. It is used in a Supreme Court case to bring that whole thing down. A year later, November 22nd, 1968, we would see on Star Trek the very first ever televised interracial kiss. It was huge. It was, I think, banned in certain areas. They didn't screen it, but it was a big deal. This was a big deal for the same reason this is a big deal, and why portraiture as an art form is so political for Black representation. The banning of interracial marriage and images like this in the 50s, right before the 60s, and even in the 60s when they were fighting over like what's appropriate for children to see, the reason that these things were banned is not because they actually had any sort of scientific social reason for banning these kind of relationships. These kind of relationships had existed. There were tons of white people who had relationships with Black people throughout the centuries. The reason it was banned was to keep property, wealth, inheritance, all that kind of thing from being given to Black men, given to Black women. They were trying to keep the wealth, they're trying to keep the home ownership well within the white grasp. What's crazy about this is that we know all this white wealth and white property was originally built on the backs of these people who had been dragged here and called black. Now, going across the pond for a second, let's go back to England, one of the major places for the transatlantic slave trade. The House of Harewood, for example, like so many other great wealthy homes, was built on sugar, the wealth of sugar, and specifically the labor of enslaved black people to produce such sugar. In 2022, the House undertakes, in conjunction with Heirs of Slavery, this organization, this project called Missing Portraits, where they are now going to try to rectify the fact that they have not honored or even acknowledged the people who made all this possible. We say missing because Harewood House has all these different portraits of the countesses and the people who own it and who've owned it and lived in it all these years, and the people who were considered the most important figures in the house's existence in the village and whatever they presided over. But always omitted from the picture was the ancestry of the people who built it, who delivered to them, who made it possible. So here we have David Harewood. He is a famous actor. He is a documentary filmmaker. He is a mental health advocate. And he has the same last name as the house, and that's because he is descended from the people who helped build it. Of course, there was some controversy that this was a photograph and not an oil painting. Why didn't the aristocrats commission or spend the money on an actual oil painting? Why did they opt for the cheaper version of an actual portrait? That's a whole other discussion. I want to talk about this portrait really quickly. Is you can see he is situated comfortably. He is well dressed. He is looking like his inquisitive, talented self. He is not brutish. He's not savage. He's not, unhinged or anything scary. This is a distinguished man sitting among the things his people built. In this picture and in this representation of this black man, he is not to be mistaken for anything but what he actually is. And again, why does any of that matter? Why now in 2024 are we worried about how black people are represented? They're everywhere. Well, we just got here in terms of positive representation that shows our full humanity. Even in this one went viral for back in the day, right? This is Jean-Baptiste Carpeau's White Women Enslaved. And this sold like hotcakes. It was a whole thing about, yes, emancipation, yes, abolition, yes, freedom for all mankind. But can we look at how he chose to portray this woman? Yes, the binding is coming off, but back in the day, a proper respected woman would not have one breast exposed, right? She wouldn't be in a state of, oh, gosh, what's going on? And like I'm undressed and I'm out and anyone can gaze upon me. This was bought by tons of wealthy white people. And I have to think that part of that plays into the accessibility of her sensuality and how there are people, like mostly men, who would have been giving either their wives or their house managers the money to buy this or picking it out for themselves. Maybe they wouldn't be interested in something that they couldn't gaze on like this. She's not portrayed as a stately woman. And I know we can have a whole thing about the sexualization of body parts and things like that, but looking in context, this is she, even in this attempt to talk about her freedom and her humanity, she's being objectified. While we bless the heart of Josiah Wedgwood, the famous, I don't want to say ceramicist, but the man who made all those famous blue and white Wedgwood plates that we also love to collect, he was a huge part of raising funds for abolition. And as you can see, this was one of the most famous images he created that, again, sold like hotcakes. But look, this is how most white people were comfortable with black representation. Here is this black man begging for his humanity to be respected. Here he is in supplication. Here he is deferent. He is asking for the white help. He needs to be pitied, and he's shackled. This was something white people would wear to show their support, but it was a very palatable kind of black person. Now let's look quickly at Vitus Shell. He is an artist from Louisiana, and he did a exhibit called Bout It, Bout It. He would do a twist on portraiture, in that most often we would see people of note, figure, political power, wealth. They're centered in these frames. He would pick community members, people who were important to him, people whose faces he knew, individuals who maybe in a police report would be reduced down to thugs or welfare queens, people who would be given these very small black stereotypes. He purposely centered them, these normal, everyday African-American people, and he gave them the dignity that he and the community members saw in them. You can't see it here, but typically in the Byzantine era and I think in the Renaissance, if I'm correct, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there were different ways of framing portraits with gold, specific colors that showed these people are important and they need to be respected. And that is something he does with the black women in his life. Something you might note in his work is that you'll see these problematic and these false or racist representations of black people in newsprint or reports or the have you, and they're in the back, and he's got this in the forefront. He has the people he knows. Now, what's noted is that he doesn't typically frame these portraits. They are left kind of unfurled, or they've got the edges out, almost as if someone had put up a protest poster or they'd handed out a leaflet from the community. This all represents the urgency and the self-made image of these people, and that this is a community-driven effort, and they're not necessarily backed or framed by institutional money. It's subversive. All of these add to the new collective memory of a society. We are adding images to the canon. We are adding images to a long history of black portrayal. Someone told me that we don't need to discuss what's in the museum because only the 1% or 1% of people actually go to these museums and see these works. Yeah, and that's the group that's constantly asking us to justify ourselves and why we are where we are. And that also completely underestimates just how many of us have somehow made it and want to see ourselves as we actually are.
So this is all I got for this video, from the video, and it's really amazing how each time black people talk about how they are being treated, or especially when it comes to houses and all that. I mean, they have that impression that black people are not supposed to be rich, you're not supposed to be wealthy, you're not supposed to have good things of life, you're not even supposed to enjoy your life as a black person. So most times, like, I also remember that I think one of her videos that I think it's Black Wealth, White Rage. You know, when they see you with some certain things, they are asking you, is this yours, or why are you supposed to be here when you, I mean, like, they feel like you are, there are some places they feel like black people are not supposed to be there when they see black people there. Just like when when black people travel in first class, business class, and all that. So they give you that look like, man, what are you doing here? Or some of them start giving them attitude and the rest of it. And also I have heard people also say that when they were constructing their house and all that, they stopped there to check around, to check what is going on and all that. And they were asking them, are you here to clean up? I mean, the owner of the house that came to supervise what is going on, and they're asking you, are you here to supervise, or sorry, to clean around and all that. I mean, the whole thing is just really crazy. That reminds me, there is this cruise, I don't know that people are going on. I think it's lasts for how many months and all that. Like, people travel around and the rest of it. And so a black woman who was also like in the ship and all in the cruise was asked if she is a worker and all that. So I mean, that impression that black people are not supposed to excel, or your riches are just, there is limits to what you are supposed to have and all that as a black person, is something that I really do not understand. I don't know why their mindset is like that. And also I remember that I told a story about how I got something for somebody, like, you know, a birthday gift, and they were asking me, how are you able to afford this? Like, bro, take that. Are you supposed to start asking me questions? How am I able to afford like a gift that I am giving to you? This is so expensive. How are you able to afford it? I mean, they try to do it. I mean, these are subtle racism. Like, when they try to act like they are concerned about you, right? And then trying to also be, racist to you and all that. So I think these are the things that black people are experiencing. I mean, when they see black people with homes and properties and all that, you see them very jealous and start acting like, kind of crazy and all that. And also I hear about black people probably going to one of their maybe houses and all that to probably check for something, and neighbors end up calling the cops on them, telling them that somebody is invading. Like, you can imagine people calling the cops on you, that you are invading your own property and all that. The whole thing is just really crazy, but then it is what it is. It's we that already know all this and we know how to handle them. So that's all I have to say, and let me know what you all think in the comment section. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.